Super. Thanks, Robin, and thanks to all who've joined this afternoon. And we've got some great insights from the Ishgaran team for you today. I'm Barry Aston. I'm one of the committee members from the IWFM community here in Ireland, and I'm keen to give you some insights into some of the events coming up before we get into the deck, and they're going to hand over to the Ishgaran team. So just a quick snapshot, some of your point of contacts from the wider team. Look, without going through all the names, if you need any contacts, feel free to come back to myself and I'll get you introductions. Also to move on to the next one, please. We've got some key events coming up over the next remaining year. We've got some great opportunity to get some insight into one of the iconic buildings on the Liffey with the Central Bank of Ireland. The Chester Beatty opportunity as well is another opportunity to see some historical footprint in the city. The Boland's Mills event is specifically going to focus towards the placemaking and the community interaction that Google have created and what has become one of Dublin's landmarks. And then further on down, just the EPBD is something that's going to affect us all in the built real estate and facilities management world. And we want to make sure people are ready for what that means in 2027 and onwards. So, look, for your time today, we want to make sure that you're coming away with key takeaways. And we're going to look, I'm going to start, instead of getting into each one of these and stealing any thunder, I'm going to introduce you or allow the team from Ishk introduce themselves on the next one and let them take over from there. So, Damon, I'm going to hand over to yourself from here, mate.
Uh, Thanks, Barry. Hi, everyone. My name's Damien Cox. I'm a civil engineer with over 19 years' experience across water services, roads, and planning. I spent 17 years across two local authorities in South Dublin County Council and Fingal County Council before I transferred over to Uisce Éireann in 2024. I initially worked on development management before moving into the demand management team. Um, we've run a number of different demand management projects to date with green schools, and we're doing a staff flow regulator trial amongst many, many other initiatives right now. So I'll pass over to the next person.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Christine Crawford. I am the Water Stewardship Program Manager for Uisce Éireann. I have over 20 years experience in marketing and communications and over 10 years experience in water stewardship, between setting up the program for Uisce Éireann and previous to that, working for the World Wildlife Fund. And my job before Uisce Éireann was with Enterprise Ireland. I'm looking forward to telling you more about the program shortly.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Kevin Murray, and I am the Metering Policy and Commercial Manager in Uisce Éireann. And as the name suggests, I'm involved in all things related to the technical aspects and the policy aspects of the water meters that we install on domestic and commercial connections. And I'm also responsible for some of the activities such as meter reading. And I'm looking forward to giving you some insight into some of the work that we're doing. Thank you.
Good afternoon, all. Brian O'Donovan. I'm recently after joining Uisce Éireann from nearly 30 years with the local authorities sector. So I've worked in planning, roads, water services, environment, housing, and community services, so a wide range. And I've spent a lot of time in water, and particularly working with local companies in Carlow-Kilkenny, where I was a local authority. Looking at kind of water use and the overall demand of water in the area. So primarily what we do in the demand area is we look at demand analysis, looking at how much water is used and where we use it. And demand management, we're focusing on the use less piece, so how much the customer uses and any way we can get efficiencies in that space to reduce the overall water usage. So we'll take you to our presentation today, which hopefully will give an insight of where we are and what we do.
Super, guys. Thanks for that. And listen, your time is highly valuable. We're extremely grateful to have you. Your content's going to be really insightful. As such, I'm sure we're going to have a number of questions. The ask for everybody on this meeting and grouping is to place those questions into the chat, and we'll pick them up once we get through the content. Over to you guys. Thanks.
So I'll commence with demand management. So look, despite Ireland's rain-drenched reputation, demand for fresh water increasingly outstrips supply. This creates a state of water scarcity, which is damaging, which has damaging environmental impacts. Despite this, water remains an undervalued, regularly wasted resource. So, very briefly, what is demand management? Demand management in the water industry involves strategies to optimize water use, reduce waste, and ensure sustainable supply, addressing challenges posed by population growth and climate change. So I'll briefly talk through the slides here. Within Uisce Éireann, we have a National Water Resources Plan, and there's three main pillars to that National Water Resources Plan: use less, lose less, and supply smarter. So lose less, largely, sorry, just back to the previous slide there, Barry, just quickly. Lose less largely revolves around leakage. Supply smarter is about Uisce Éireann improving our infrastructure. A lot of our infrastructure is very old. Some of it's nearly 100 years old. And use less, which is improve water efficiency. This is where demand management comes in. It's all about improving behavioural change within the population and educating people on the importance of water. So at the moment, myself and Brian, we're working on the demand management strategy. This strategy's been in the works for a number of years. It's gone through a few revisions. But this strategy will help us set out and deliver the use less pillar of the National Water Resources Plan. So next slide there, Barry, please. So you can see there, use less equals water demand management equals water conservation. We often get a question, what's the difference? In my mind, water conservation is kind of a more strategic outlook. Water demand management comes down to the more granular level where people make changes in their own household. So you can see in the graphic there on the right-hand side, the difference between lose less and use less. Lose less tends to start at outside the boundary of the house, whereas use less is everything within inside the boundary of the house. So next slide there. So you can see all the different challenges, and this is why demand management is so important. Ireland's population is constantly growing. In the last few years, I think we've gone from 4 or 5 million up to nearly 7 million in total around the country. The economic growth, the amount of house building going on in the country naturally puts a demand on more water, and our challenge is there's only so much water in the country in terms of where we abstract our water from, despite the fact it rains so much. Actually rains more in the west of the country, whereas a lot of the population lives in the east, and most of our water is coming from the River Liffey. You may or may not have heard of the National Water Supply Project, which is the plan to bring water from the River Shannon into Dublin. And ultimately, our aim with demand management is to get people to cut down on the amount of water they use, because we lose an awful lot of water through unnecessary use, leakage, and we believe that we can facilitate the growth of more housing simply by cutting back on some of the unnecessary water use, making little changes in our day-to-day use, whether it's more water efficient fittings, turning off taps when you're brushing your teeth, little things like that. So one of the other challenges is aging infrastructure. Like I mentioned already, a lot of our infrastructure around Dublin is built in the 40s, 50s, and naturally that causes problems as time goes on, leads to more leaks. Supply constraints. There's certainly last summer we had a very dry summer. The winter compared to this winter, was actually quite dry last winter, which led to droughts. And again, back to that public perception that it rains so much in Ireland, why do we need to conserve water? So we're trying to challenge that and try and educate the public that it's such an important resource, that it's not down to the fact that it rains so much, that demand regularly exceeds supply. Next slide there, Barry. So again, population growth. You can see the population's only going one direction. And one part of which Christine will talk about is we're trying to teach the non-domestic community is water stewardship and how they can save money, which ultimately is very much in their interest, because the non-domestic community obviously pays for the water. So how can demand management help? The idea is we create more capacity for growth by reducing the existing demand. So you can see there the population growth, 3.85 million in 2000 to 5.2 million in 2022, and then 5.8 million to 6.8 million by 2050. So that has a huge challenge on our water facilities. Next slide there, Barry. So like I said already, aging infrastructure, older networks are less resilient to climate and demand shocks, customer side leakage and inefficiencies. So again, demand management can help by reducing demand, lower stress on existing assets, and helps quantify and target customer side losses. So you can see on the right hand side there that 1.7 billion litres of water treated daily to 650 plants, 1,700 pumping stations, 65,000 kilometres of network. And Uisce Éireann, I suppose it's worth mentioning, is a very unique kind of position that there's one utility for the whole country. We liaise regularly with the UK water utilities, and they would have different utilities, whether it's Severn Trent, Affinity, and they'd kind of cover an area, but it kind of gives us a more strategic outlook for the country that we can plan nationwide. At the same time, you can see the challenges there in terms of the scale of what we're dealing with, in terms of the length of the network, the amount of treatment plants that have to be maintained, the amount of pumping stations that have to be maintained. You've probably heard enough from me now. I'll pass you on to Brian.
Yeah, perfect. I'll jump to the next slide there. Yeah, listen, I suppose the supply constraints that Damien has mentioned, again, just a summer rainfall is looking at about a 15% decrease between 2030 and 40. So we don't have the
Brian seems to have frozen. Okay.
We got you back, Brian.
Track, yeah. Are you?
Yeah, thank you. Spot on.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know why that went. Again, just you can see in terms of the climate, obviously we're gone up 0.7 of a degree Celsius, and that could rise to 1.4 degrees. So that's significant. Let's moving on then to the public perception. The next one. Yeah, and again, I suppose Damien has mentioned it, but I suppose there was a study done by the Water Consumer Survey there by the Water Forum. And you know, the attitude behavior, people see that water is important, but again, they don't know in a lot of cases where the water comes from. And water scarcity is seen as temporary, seen as kind of a summer item. But we get a report every morning in terms of the water that's supplied for the Greater Dublin area, and it's not a knife edge every day, whether it's winter or summer, regardless of the rain, because the reservoirs are a certain size and the treatment plants are a certain size, and water has to be treated before it enters into the network. So I suppose, how does this all link to yourselves? I want to move on then to the next slide. Again, yeah, you know, from a water efficiency point of view, just from your own, just to mention water labeling, again, the products that you're using. And again, this is something that we want to look towards getting, you know, this is a water label that's being trialed in Europe at the moment. And you've seen it all on your energy products, but we want to get the same on the water products, so people know how heavy a water user each product that you buy in is. So I want to move on. Just again, give you a couple more quick stats on it. Again, that's just a picture of the Aviva Stadium full of water, and that's 1,000 megalitres of water in the Aviva Stadium. So the amount of water we use would fill the Aviva Stadium twice in a day. From the usage there, we lose about 36% in leakage. About 5% then is on the customer side is leaks, and then 59% is consumed. Of that 59% is estimated a quarter of that water is lost within production or excess water use. So again, that's a huge amount of water. The amount of water lost and the amount of water that's excess use could create enough water to supply an additional 1 million people. That's the scale of the amount of water that we're losing. Going to move on. And again, I suppose just some labeling that you could put and you could introduce on it that save water, do not waste, every drop counts. The theme of today's meeting, and again, just not to waste water. So just moving on to how facilities can link into that. Excess use can come from various different areas. Again, sanitary and staff facilities, so high flush toilets. These are areas to look at continuous flush. So this would be, the likes of urinals that are going during the night when nobody's using buildings. The likes of cleaning, washing, and maintenance. Again, manual hose washing instead of trigger controlled. You'd see plenty of people washing down yards and hoses left running. Trigger controls would prevent that. Over frequent washing, very much this happens in industry on shift work where people will wash it down because it's part of their duty, and then an hour later someone who changes shift will wash it down again, even though it's not necessary. The likes of cooling, HVAC, heat rejection systems, again, cooling towers, landscape and grounds. During summer, this is huge. People watering during the day because that's when they're working. And again, most of that going up into the atmosphere. So again, watering at night can help massively. Behavioral places, again, leaving equipment running between production cycles, can be a huge amount. Process inefficiencies, again, oversized safety margins, a huge area in it. Poor water recycling. So again, in terms of grey water, rainwater harvesting, the simple use of water butts for kind of outside activities in gardens, would be very useful. And that's particularly useful in the like of the construction sector. And then commissioning and control failures, again, uncalibrated flow valves, poorly tuned automated washes or rinse cycles. These can all be issues within facilities. So I'll wrap up on the slide just in terms of, how we can look. This didn't translate too well, this slide actually. So again, what this slide was supposed to be saying was, I suppose, what we look at is, is water required? So, these are the questions that you need to ask. So again, do you require the water? And the first question you ask is that, yes, it's not discretion. We have to use it. So it's by regulation. We need it for safety. We need it for food ingredients. We need it for our process control, fire, health, hygiene, etc. We need it, and we're using it in the correct quantities. So that's fine. That's what the water's there for. The question then is, can we save on that? Is there a way that we can use good practice to reduce it? Better technology, better products, better equipment. Can that be introduced, or better control measures? And could this water be used by a different water source? Can we use reuse or substitution facilities? Is that possible? And again, are we using water that exceeds minimum needed for the same outcome? So again, if you're looking, the simple one of brushing your teeth, you leave your tap running, and again, you get the same outcome by turning off the tap by brushing it. Again, applying that to facilities management. Again, are we using more than we are? Because again, 25% of it's been wasted. So again, that's just maybe a context and a background. And I might pass on to Christine now, who will go through this water stewardship, and again, to learn more about how to save water in facilities.
Thanks so much, Brian. So just if we could go on to the next slide, please. Yeah, so just to start off, I just want to make it clear why the water stewardship program and water stewardship in general matters for facilities managers. I think just setting the context, there is issues with, rising costs, and there's pressure there to meet your sustainability or ESG targets. There's an increasing focus on water use and discharge and costs, and also aging infrastructure and hidden inefficiencies. So basically, water is often overlooked, but it is a controllable cost and risk. Next slide, please. So the opportunity here is with the program, you can reduce your operational costs, improve efficiency across sites, identify leaks and unnecessary usage, strengthen compliance and reduce risk, support organizational sustainability goals, so better visibility and better control. So what is water stewardship? It's very much a practical approach to understand how water is used across your sites. It identifies inefficiencies and risks, taking targeted actions to improve performance and helping you to move from reactive to proactive water management. So what we have on offer at Uisce Éireann is a fully funded, it's funded between ourselves at Uisce Éireann and the SkillNet. It's an 8-week program. We've already trained over 1,500 water stewards, and our modules sort of focus in on water mapping, identifying savings, action planning, and helping you to build your business case for your senior management. There's fantastic optional workshops where you can avail of peer-to-peer learning and expert, one-on-one expert support from our delivery partner with 2050 partners and our experts in Uisce Éireann, which is a real bonus, and we'll help you to develop your water charter for your assessment, and you'll receive your accreditation at that point. The benefits of the program, you really will get a clear understanding of the water use across your facilities with the water mapping and quick wins at your site. There's the identification of inefficiencies and savings opportunities, brilliant practical actions you can implement immediately, tools and frameworks to support ongoing management. And as I said, the peer learning, and the feedback is that that's been super helpful for our water stewards to date. So you get that with other like-minded individuals and other organizations. It works for facility teams in particular because it's directly relevant to day-to-day operations. It helps you to prioritize where to focus effort, supports cost control and planning, and builds internal capability within your team, and obviously gives you visibility and control. So we have a recent example from a dedicated cohort for facilities management companies, a large facilities management company. And this is basically a bit of a case study and just to show you how it worked for these companies. So the water savings identification was quite strong. So the water mapping and bill reviews revealed significant savings by pinpointing unnoticed areas of high consumption, reducing unnecessary usage. So targeted actions like fixing losses and improving housekeeping reduced water waste without large investments. There was a big tick was the enhanced monitoring and reporting. So improved tracking and data ownership enabled early detection of anomalies and transparent reporting. And then just practical impact through stewardship, embedding the water stewardship in daily management, achieved savings, cost reduction, and operational resilience. So overall, the program has achieved significant positive outcomes. So we've counted, well over 2,000 water conservations projects are in place nationwide. On our annual health check scheme, we're seeing a 25% reduction in water consumption. 96% of our graduates have KPIs in place around water use. It's having a very positive impact on our water stewards company's reputation, reduces costs, and actively supports sustainability targets. So I very much encourage everyone to register today, reduce your costs, improve efficiency, and stay ahead of compliance and sustainability requirements. You can register directly at water.ie. Please get in touch with myself as well if you'd like any more information. And as I said, this is fully funded, and we'll be delighted to support you on your journey. Thank you so much.
Hello, this is Kevin. Hope you can hear me okay. And my role is the role of metering policy and commercial manager in Ishgaren. And I have been metering technical specialist in Ishgaren going back to the start of our domestic metering program. And prior to that, I was heavily involved in the non-domestic metering programs run by local authorities in the noughties. And today I sit on a number of international technical committees, including those setting the international standards and European standards for water meters. If we just go to the next slide there. So apologies again, this slide is slightly out of format, but the basic information is on this. And this is just to introduce you to the different types of water meter that we would typically have on non-domestic or commercial connections around Ireland. On the smaller non-domestic connections, we would have in the top left corner there, you'll see the rotary piston meters, which are the same types of meters that we have across our domestic cohort. We read these typically in a drive-by, using a drive-by technology. As the van drives past, it will automatically pick up the reading from a radio unit that sits on top of the meter. And then for some of the larger meters, some of the larger connections, we would have, perhaps for your typical office building, we might have a DN40 to a DN100 mechanical meter. And you can see examples there in the bottom right of a single jet mechanical meter. In the top right, you'll see what's known as a Voltman turbine mechanical meter. And then in the bottom left, you see a combination meter, which is essentially putting a mechanical turbine meter and a rotary piston meter into the one box. And there's a little valve that will direct the high flows and the low flows to the appropriate meter. And then for the very large industrial type customers, we have electromagnetic meters. And these have no moving parts within the water flow. As you can appreciate, they're much more expensive. They tend to be on DN80 or DN100 or larger. And what you'll often see there is that part of the meter is in the ground in a chamber, and what's known as the transmitter or the display is in a kiosk above ground. And these meters are all covered by our asset class strategy, whereas you will appreciate we're attempting to ensure that through the lifetime of these assets, they're maintained to preserve a service for the various business needs. We use these meters for billing of our non-domestic customers, but we're also using them for leakage management purposes. The data feeds into our NetBase leakage management system from all our domestic and non-domestic meters, and indeed from all our network meters. So if we look at the next slide, what I want to just show you here is a very simple slide, which is showing that meters are blinkered, like a horse wearing blinkers, and they will only see a certain flow range. So you can have a meter that is too large, and because it is too large, it won't measure some of the flows at some of the low flows. And equally, you could have a meter that is too small and is getting damaged because it's incapable of dealing with the high flows that are going through it. So an important point to note is that there is an optimum operating range for each meter. And quite often you'll see that the water meter on a connection is a size or two smaller than the diameter of the pipe. And this is to ensure that the meter is correctly sized to meet the flow. On this diagram, you're seeing the permissible errors that are allowed on meters. And when we purchase meters in their optimum operating range, they're intended to be accurate to within plus or minus 2%. And in the lower flow ranges between what's known as Q1 and Q2, they're expected to be accurate to within plus or minus 5%. Now, there's a very interesting key differential between what happens in Ireland and what happens in the UK once the meter goes into service, because in the UK, once that meter goes into service, the error boundaries, the maximum permissible errors on those optimum operating ranges go from plus or minus 2% to plus or minus 2.5%. And on the low ranges, the plus or minus 5% goes to plus or minus 6%. However, in Ireland and in the rest of Europe, those permissible error boundaries actually double, and the 2% goes to plus or minus 4%, and the 5% goes to plus or minus 10%. And this is all important to know because it gives you an indication of, as meters get older, they will start to suffer more wear and tear, and those errors will increase. And they are allowed to increase up to, say, plus or minus 4% in the optimum operating range, and still be considered metrologically accurate. If we go on to the next slide, what I want to just introduce you to here is that once you register your business account with Ishgare on our website, and there is a link there to our website, but it's easily found. Once you register your business account, you can sign in to see the consumption profile that we're reading from your meter. Now, typically, we're reading meters either every month or every 3 months. It's only the very larger meters that we would be reading every month. But where we're normally reading every 3 months, we pick up an end of month read, as well as the read at the time that we drive past the meter, which allows an average daily consumption to be calculated. And that is the data that you can see today from the meter on your connection here in Ireland. And that's an important thing to be aware of if you want to see how much water you're using. However, if we just go to the next slide, we have also set up a process now to allow customers to take a data feed from the meter on their connection, and they can take and then they can take that data feed and take it into a building management system, or take it through their own logger into a third-party hosting platform. And the way this is done is to put in what's known as a pulse splitter, which will interrupt the pulse that is coming to our radio units or to our data loggers, and send a copy of that pulse through to your own data logger or building management system. And so we have this procedure set up where you can apply to us to be able to install your own data logger. And if you just go to the next slide, there's a process diagram that shows you how we will treat those applications as we receive them. Our concern is that this is done by suitably qualified and trained personnel, because you can get situations where if it's done correctly, then pulses will be lost, or there'll be shadow pulses, and we don't get accurate readings. So it's important for us that in making this facility available, that it doesn't damage the meter reading, the integrity of the meter reading data that we obtain. And the next piece I just want to say to you is talking to you about introducing smart metering, because those facilities we have at the moment, where you can read the data, the monthly data on our website, or you can put in a pulse splitter to take a feed into your own data logger, we would ideally like to get to a position where we're able to provide customers with daily consumption data, or even hourly consumption data, directly from the meter. So currently what we're doing is a series of smart metering trials, following on from experience in the UK, where they're rolling out 10 million smart water meters in this 5-year investment period. Our trial is currently happening in Mullingar, and we're using what's known as the Itron Cybel 5 device, using the LoRaWAN radio protocol facilitated by Netmore, and bringing the data into our current meter data management system, Temetra. And from that, we're now able to see on twice a day, we're able to see hourly consumption data, largely from domestic customers, but there's about 100 non-domestic customers in that trial as well. And the expectation is that in a couple of years' time, we'll be able to roll out some sort of a solution where we'll be able to make hourly data available to customers on request. And that is essentially it. There is one last slide where I say thank you very much. And I introduce you to the Uisce Éireann Facilities Management team who are working every day to introduce smart metering solutions. And thank you very much.
Listen, guys, the super insight that's meaningful to us all. You're going from strength to strength, becoming one of the key utility providers to us across the country. So we're grateful for your input. I'm going to open it up to the callers for any questions. I've got some myself, but I'm very much keen to give everyone else the opportunity to, place questions to the SME team that we have here today. If there's any takers, just to come off mute. If not, you're going to have to listen to myself for a few, I'm afraid. Super. I'll tell you what, quick. Sorry, work away.
Sorry,
Brilliant, Terry.
everyone. Sorry, I really enjoyed that, particularly the metering side of things and how accurate you can get down to depending upon the volume, which is quite interesting to me. I'm really interested in the FM skills for environmental sustainability and really look forward to that course and the net zeros as well. What do you think the biggest challenge is for us in terms of understanding that the water uses impacts the wider, I suppose, island? Forget about, your own city or your own area or county. I think for me, you have all these like great meters, but if nobody's looking at the water that's running through the night, if you know what I mean, it really doesn't make any difference if you metered it or not, other than maybe someone will pop in once a year and see, oh, that's been running through the night. So just wondering, are you facing the same challenges trying to get uptick from senior management, or how does that fall for you guys?
If I could take that one, you're absolutely correct. And one of the findings from the sort of rollout of smart metering programs is, I think Thames Water are finding that 25% of water supplied to non-domestic, non-household properties is being lost in continuous flow. Now, some of that might be process use, but an awful lot of it is to say things running overnight when they don't need to. Even with our current small meters, we have leak alarms on those, and we have some processes to sort of alert customers, and we have with our non-domestics a first fix free program. So we have some processes to alert customers that we have detected what's known as a continuous flow alarm on their meter. In the context of smart metering technology coming in, the challenge faced by a lot of water companies is just the deluge of additional continuous flow notifications coming in and getting those back out to customers. So to whatever extent over the next couple of years we're able to develop ways that we can automatically push those leak alarms across to customers, then that would be very valuable, and that's part of what we're exploring through doing these trials at the moment.
And Kevin, just on that, I mean, from my previous role in air, we really did get those alerts to let us know that there was unusual water usage through the night. So, I mean, it's proof in concept that you do get to customers in terms of the data and stuff. I mean, from our perspective, that problem is very easily fixed to using automated AI. I mean, really simply, it would not even take a couple of days to sort. And I'm just wondering, have you thought about anything like using AI to do that, to push that information?
I have a meeting on that this afternoon.
Yeah, brilliant.
Superb. We've had a couple of questions in on the Q&A section on the chat. So Chris Malone, thank you. Prevalent question. Being honest, I can relate to it myself. Kevin, I'm going to guess this might be for yourself as well as related to metering. Within multi-let buildings where, a landlord has got probably a single meter within, yes, you've got multi-tenants, all separate organizations with separate air codes. Ultimately, they have to rely on the data they're getting from the landlord. Is there going to be any steps or any options currently available or in the future where the individual occupier in that building will be able to get the data direct as opposed to from the landlord?
Yeah, it very much depends on the nature of the building, and from our perspective, our first priority, I suppose, in my role within our metering department, I'm serving a number of different masters within the organization. On one side, the customer billing side, another demand management team here, like Brian and Damien, and then our leakage management team. And our first priority on our leakage management team is to ensure that we've measured the water that's leaving our network, so that we have a bulk meter on the building, and we're able to account for the water that leaves our network. After that, depending on the nature of the building, older buildings with with complicated plumbing systems make it extremely difficult and challenging to do submetering solutions in those scenarios. In other scenarios where you've got clearly differentiated plumbing systems, it may be possible to do submetering solutions and then give independent billing and account of water use to those customers. And indeed, our customer operations team generally would like to have an individual billing relationship with customers, but they will keep coming back to the likes of me, who is saying, you are creating an enormous headache for the future management of those assets if you're going to be putting sub-meters into buildings where the occupancy can change, where units can be divided, units can be amalgamated, and we have to give serious consideration to whether it is feasible to have sub-metering solutions to some of these. So from an asset management point of view, I'm not entirely against it. I'm aware of what our customer operations team would like to achieve, and I'm aware of the value of being able to influence demand management and water conservation with individual users of water. But our primary objective is to make sure we've accounted for the water leaving the network, and that's a roundabout way of saying we do our best, but we do have to be mindful of the lifetime costs of submetering solutions.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a challenging ask, and it needs a bit more further thought. All right, but thanks for that insight. And look, Kevin, you seem to be popular, which is great. More on the metering. We've one in from Connor Cooney. With that data that's becoming available from the customers, are you going to be in a position to maybe benchmark when it comes to the type, talking about asset type, building type, and so forth, with occupancy levels and so forth? And if that was possible, is that something that in the future might be made available?
Well, certainly I can say that as part of our regulatory reporting, colleagues have been looking at the typical usage of different cohorts of non-domestics. I think Brian and Damien might actually be able to come in on that question as well, because there has been work done. As we see, one of the things we need to do is, as we report leakage, we need to be able to say how much of the water that is not measured is being used by, say, unmetered non-domestics and unmetered domestics. And in that context, our leakage team has had some analysis and reporting done of typical usage of different types of properties. But I'd invite, maybe Brian and Damien might have some more to say on whether that sort of information is going to be possibly made available in the future.
Yeah, well, I suppose I just maybe adding to what we said in the presentation, Barry, that I suppose we don't have standards under Part G in terms of what the average use per person or per business should be, but there are design guidelines in terms of design for water efficiency. So a couple of things we need in the country here are the product specifications in terms of what we showed you on how much water each product uses, because you can have a tap that uses 6 liters per minute or a tap that uses 15 liters per minute. So again, it's about correct product specification and that there's information for the customer out there. And certainly in terms of the overall design, we are looking, like the UK standard where they have a per person consumption. And we would hope that we get to a point where water efficiency, similar to energy efficiency, becomes part of the design and part of the process of design of a building. And that's thought of. And I suppose that will bring consistency across, facilities and what the expected uses are. And then we can measure and give advice out to facilities management and the rest of the wider industries on what average and typical uses should be versus what people are using.
Super, guys. Thanks for that insight. It's very, very appreciated. Christine, one last question, really, just on the water stewardship piece. I'd imagine it'll resonate with many on this call, and I know you've done already, or the Ishgaren have done already a lot of steps with some the occupiers and the FM providers in delivering that course. Really, on the practical side of it, is it virtual? Is it in person? Is it a mix? Can you give some insight into how it's delivered?
Yeah, absolutely, Barry. So it's basically all of the modules are online, but throughout there would be like three different options to join, the orientation day, which is a webinar. There might be an offsite workshop, but that's optional. And then you'll have your report out day where you're presenting your charter to the team, the cohort, and getting feedback on that, and basically your graduation day. So it's very much, and you can do it, you have the space of, 8 weeks to sort of take those modules at your own pace and really hopefully get the most out of it as you possibly can. It's just really depends how much you put into it, but a lot of our graduates have really found it incredibly useful. So
Super.
yes, as I said, just, please feel free to register and we'd be delighted to support you with it.
No, it's appreciated, Christine. Thank you.
Thank
We're having
you.
more questions, guys, coming in. We're coming to the time of the call. So what we might do is we'll gather them. We'll share them with the amazing SMEs that we have here today from Michigan and get your responses back on the wider piece. Just to or Cormac, can you just roll on to the deck, please, and we get to the closeout. Super. So look, there are upcoming courses available. Greater detail available will be shared out with this deck. Um, Super. So look, you'll have some virtual training opportunities, both environmental case studies and so forth on the adoption as well. The climate adoption in WFM is also available via the QR code. And then to simply say your CPD tracking is available further on. Next slide, please. It is going to be available through this QR code there with your code up on the left-hand side of the screen. From there, simply a huge, again, thank you to the team. We're extremely grateful to have your insights. No doubt we're going to further learn more about Ishka Éireann in the future with everything that you guys are doing and the opportunity to innovate with the occupiers, the people creating the infrastructure and the buildings throughout the country and the people operating them will no doubt be many as you come up over the years. So thank you.